Hello everyone. Today I will continue sharing with you the love story of Sam and police officer Lee. I hope you enjoy the video. Sam had never imagined that her life could take such a dark turn. In such a short span of time, from a person who lived quietly and stayed away from trouble, she became someone detained, suspected, and stripped of her freedom without even understanding what was happening. Every explanation became meaningless without evidence in hand. When the cell door closed, Sam realized the terrifying helplessness of a person caught in the vortex of prejudice. Outside, police officer Lee was no better off. He knew very well that a truth was being concealed. Two crucial pieces of evidence that could turn the situation around for Sam had once been within his reach. Yet, because of a single moment of carelessness, the phone, where the decisive video was stored, fell, shattered, and with it all hope was cut off right before his eyes. Lee did not allow himself to panic. By day he worked like a machine, following every procedure and every step by the book. No one saw the unease in his eyes as he signed documents, nor did anyone hear the heavy pounding of his heart beneath that calm exterior. When night fell and the city sank into silence, Lee truly began his own battle. He sat alone, reviewing every smallest detail related to Tan. He missed nothing, not even the vaguest sign. Fragmented pieces of information gradually assembled into a suspicious picture. Tan constantly changed hiding places, appearing and disappearing without pattern. The traces he deliberately left behind were enough to mislead the impatient, but to Lee, they were clear proof of someone who had prepared carefully in advance. The deeper he dug, the more certain Lee became. Sam was merely a pawn in a plan long set in motion. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the woman holding the shattered phone lived in constant anxiety. Every time the repair shop called, her heart tightened. She knew clearly that what was being repaired was no longer just an electronic device, but the only fragile thread connecting Sam to the truth. Inside the cold cell, Sam curled up in a corner. The bare walls and the harsh white light made everything feel frighteningly unfamiliar. The silence was so complete that she could hear her own trembling breaths. Sam clenched her hands tightly, her nails digging into her skin, but that physical pain was nothing compared to the panic closing in around her. She did not scream or cry. Her sobs were crushed tight in her chest, as if letting them loose even a little would cause her to collapse completely. Sam could not understand how everything had gone so wrong. A person who had never done anything wrong, overnight burdened with grave accusations. In the midst of despair, Lee's image suddenly appeared in her mind. Just thinking that he was still out there, still not giving up, Sam bit her lip and told herself to endure a little longer. Just a little more. On the other side, Lee was racing against time. He followed every fragile lead, fearing that if he slowed even a step, Tan would disappear forever. On the deserted road leading out of the residential area, a light drizzle coated the surface with a dangerously slick layer. Lee rode on in silence, his mind fixed on a single thought: this had to end as soon as possible. But in one brief moment of distraction, swerving to avoid a sudden obstacle, the wheels skidded hard. Lee had no time to react. A dull crash echoed through the empty space. His body was thrown violently, slamming onto the road. A searing pain surged through him, washing away all other sensations. Blood seeped through his clothes. His limbs went numb, no longer responding to his will. In his dazed state, the only image that rose in Lee's mind was not the fugitive. It was Sam. She had not yet been cleared of all charges. That thought forced him to cling to consciousness amid the tearing pain in his body. Lee was taken to the hospital when dawn was near. The glaring white emergency lights flooded the hallway, the sharp scent of disinfectant making the air stifling. The hurried footsteps of nurses, the clatter of the gurney wheels on cold tiles, all blended into a frantic chorus. Lee's body was laid onto a hospital bed. His blood-soaked clothes were cut away, and his injuries were treated swiftly in tense silence. The pain did not subside. It throbbed and lingered, spreading from his chest down his arm and across his back. Each breath felt as though an invisible force was crushing his ribcage. He closed his eyes, trying not to let his consciousness slip away. In the hazy moment between waking and sleep, he vaguely heard the doctor instructing absolute rest and no strenuous movement. Those words passed by him like a breeze. Because in Lee's mind only one thing existed. Sam was still detained. When he fully regained consciousness, Lee felt the tight layers of bandages wrapped around his body. His arm throbbed, his body felt heavy, as if it no longer belonged to him. He opened his eyes to a white ceiling unfamiliar and cold. A brief sense of emptiness passed through him, but in an instant it was replaced by a familiar anxiety. Lee tried to push himself up, but a sharp pain immediately forced him to stop. Doctors and nurses rushed to restrain him, reminding him that his condition was unstable, and he needed to remain still to avoid complications. Lee listened but did not truly absorb their words. To him, time itself was more dangerous than his wounds. Every passing minute was another minute Sam had to endure injustice. Elsewhere, Sam continued to live through long days with no sense of morning or night. The light in the cell never fully turned off, making time feel endlessly stretched. She sat with her back against the wall, eyes darkened from lack of sleep. The questions, the suspicious looks, the heavy silences, everything repeated over and over, slowly wearing down her spirit. There were moments when Sam felt she was about to collapse. She wondered whether anyone truly believed her, whether the truth still mattered when everything had been twisted for so long. But whenever those thoughts surfaced, Lee's image returned. She remembered the way he stood quietly, his steady gaze, his deep but resolute voice. Just thinking that he was still searching for a way, Sam forced herself to take a deep breath and remain standing. In the quiet hospital room, Lee's phone suddenly vibrated. The small sound rang out so clearly that it startled him. Lee reached for the phone, his movement slow with pain. When he saw the caller ID, his heart began to pound harder. It was the repair shop. The voice on the other end could not hide its urgency. The data had been recovered. Not completely intact, but clear enough. The video was still there. Lee froze for a few seconds. All the sounds around him seemed to vanish. The pain in his body receded into the background. In that moment, there was only the rapid beat of his heart, and a sudden surge of life flowing through his veins. Hope, the most fragile thing of all, appeared with a clarity so sharp it hurt. Without hesitation, Lee closed the phone and tried to sit up. Every movement brought searing pain, but he did not stop. He put on his jacket, hiding the slight tremor in his body. When the doctors and nurses noticed and tried to stop him, Lee simply shook his head in silence. In his eyes there was no room left for hesitation. He left the hospital before fully recovering. Each heavy step down the long corridor, his breath ragged, sweat soaking his back. But Lee did not allow himself to slow down. In his mind, the image of Sam in the cold cell kept flashing, urging him forward. At the repair shop, Lee held the phone as if grasping the fate of a human life. The screen displayed the restored video. The image was slightly distorted, but clear enough to see what had happened. Each passing frame cut through every lie that had existed before. Lee tightened his grip on the phone. He knew this was exactly what Sam had been desperately waiting for all these days. This was the only way out. Without rest or delay, Lee headed straight for the police station. Pain continued to torment every step, but his resolve had never been clearer. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to deliver the truth to where it belonged, because only then could Sam be given back the life she never deserved to lose. Lee arrived at the police station as the sky faded into the pale gray of early morning. The familiar hallway appeared before him, yet never had each step felt so heavy. A dull ache spread from his wounds throughout his body, reminding him that he had not yet recovered. Still, Lee did not stop. He walked straight into the office and placed the phone on the desk with a resolve that needed no explanation. No one asked about his condition. All eyes were fixed on the video playing on the screen. The image was imperfect, grainy and slightly shaky, but clear enough to reveal the truth that had long been concealed. A shadowy figure crept through the darkness. A bag was hurriedly thrown into the yard. Then the figure left just as quickly, disappearing into the night. It was not Sam. With every passing frame, each accusation and every suspicious glance once aimed at her was silently erased. The room fell into silence. There were no more arguments, no more speculation. The truth spoke for itself, clear and undeniable. Lee leaned against the wall, cold sweat beading on his forehead. His body trembled slightly from pain and the tension that had built up over so many days. Yet inside him a slow sense of relief spread. It was not the joy of victory but release. At last justice had found its way back. On the other side of the iron door, Sam had no idea what was happening. She sat quietly in the cell, arms wrapped around her knees. Time had lost all meaning for her. Each day was exactly the same. Cold walls, pale white light, a silence that pressed in until it was hard to breathe. Sam no longer cried as much as before. The pain had settled into a vague, hollow emptiness. She was simply waiting. Waiting for something she did not understand for a length of time she could not measure. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway. Unlike before, this time the sound was neither hurried nor heavy. The iron door slowly opened. Light from outside flooded in, making Sam instinctively squint. She lifted her head, her expression still slow to react. The officer standing at the door looked at her differently than before. There was no suspicion, no coldness. Just a short sentence, one that left Sam frozen. "You're free." For a moment Sam could not grasp the meaning of those words. She stood up slowly, her legs trembling as if they could no longer support her. She stepped out of the room that had held her for so many long days, her heart pounding wildly. Everything happened too fast for her to prepare herself. When the final door closed behind her, Sam stopped. And then she saw him. Lee stood at the end of the hallway, leaning against the wall for balance. His arm was wrapped in white bandages, his face pale from pain and exhaustion. He was clearly not recovered, yet he forced himself to stand there, waiting. In that moment, all the emotions Sam had suppressed for so long burst forth. She could not speak. Tears spilled uncontrollably, her body shaking violently. Sam hurried toward Lee and almost collapsed into his arms. A choked sob escaped her, carrying with it all the fear, humiliation, and pain she had endured alone. Lee gently tightened his embrace, even as pain from his injuries made him grit his teeth. He said nothing. The embrace was enough. Enough for Sam to know she was truly safe. Enough for all the injustice to dissolve in silence. After a long while, when emotions slowly settled, Lee took Sam away from that place. The familiar village road appeared before them. There were no more wary glances, no whispered voices behind their backs. The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying a sense of peace she had thought was lost. Sam sat beside Lee in silence, but it was no longer a frightening silence. It was the quiet of two people who had just crossed the fragile line between loss and hope. She turned to look at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and emotion. Sam understood that to reach this moment, Lee had paid a heavy price. And Lee understood too, that from that moment on, he would never let her face that fear alone again. The small wooden house came into view as the day leaned toward evening. Sam stood before the familiar door, her heart suddenly heavy. She had been gone only a short time, yet it felt as though she had been away for years. Everything was the same. The old steps, the simple porch, the trees in the yard swaying gently in the wind, but inside her everything had changed. She took a deep breath as if to reassure herself that she had truly returned, that this was not a fragile dream that could vanish at any moment. Lee stood behind her, moving forward slowly. Each step was still heavy from wounds not fully healed. Pain flared now and then, but he did not show it. His gaze rested on Sam's back as she stood before her home. In that moment, Lee realized that the most precious thing was not solving a case or catching a criminal, but this, seeing the person he had tried so hard to protect finally able to return to her life. Sam opened the door. The house was quiet, the familiar scent of wood soothing her heart. She stepped inside, set her bag down, and stood still for a long moment in the small room. All the tension, fear, and despair that had built up over so many days finally had a chance to spill out. But this time they did not come as painful tears, only a trembling sense of relief. Lee entered after her and gently closed the door. Neither spoke for a long while. The silence between them was not heavy. Instead, it carried a rare sense of safety. Sam turned to look at Lee, her eyes resting on the layers of white bandages around his arm. Her throat tightened. She knew exactly what he had paid for the truth. Sam stepped closer, her voice so soft it was almost a whisper. "You should rest." Lee simply smiled faintly, a tired but calm smile. He nodded and let Sam guide him to sit down. Though his body ached, his mind felt strangely at peace. Here everything seemed to slow down. There were no sirens, no cold lights of cells or hospital rooms. Evening fell gently. Sam went into the kitchen. She did not cook anything elaborate, just the familiar dishes she used to make before. But today, every movement was slower, more careful, as if she were cherishing each ordinary moment she had nearly lost. Lee sat at the table, quietly watching her. He wanted to help, but each time he stood, Sam gently stopped him. "Let me." 3 simple words filled with care, left Lee with no argument. When the meal was ready, they sat across from each other. The warm yellow light fell over the small table, creating a strangely comforting space. They ate slowly without haste, as if by slowing down, the outside world could no longer intrude. Sam occasionally looked up at Lee. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the pain he tried to hide. Yet instead of fear, a steady strength rose within her. She was no longer the woman swept helplessly into events beyond her control. She knew that from this moment on, she would not face everything alone. Tan had not yet been caught. Lee knew that. He also knew the road ahead would not be smooth. But as he looked at Sam sitting safely before him, he understood that every effort and every pain had been worth it. He did not make grand promises. He did not speak of a distant future. He said only one thing. "No matter what happens," Lee said slowly, his voice low and firm, "I won't let you face fear alone again." Sam did not answer right away. She looked at him for a long moment, then gently nodded. In her eyes now there was no trace of confusion or doubt, only trust and a quiet peace. It was not the end of all hardship, but the beginning of a new path, one forged by justice, faith, and feelings tempered by the storm. Outside, the wind continued to whisper through the trees. Inside the small house, 2 people who had crossed the fragile boundary between loss and hope sat side by side, silent, yet steadfast. After everything, they understood that as long as they had each other, every challenge would eventually find a way to be overcome.
Xin chào mọi người, cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video hôm nay của mình. Chúc mọi người có một ngày mới vui vẻ, hạnh phúc và một ngày làm việc tràn đầy năng lượng. Hy vọng rằng mọi người sẽ yêu thích những câu chuyện mình chia sẻ và ủng hộ kênh cho mình, cũng như cho mình động lực để mình làm nhiều video hơn cho mọi người cùng xem. Hiện tại thì những video của mình đang được phát hành vào khung giờ 7 giờ tối tại Việt Nam. Nếu mà mọi người yêu thích những video của mình thì nhớ bấm like, share, bật chuông thông báo để nhận thông báo khi mình đăng video mới nhất, và chia sẻ đến bạn bè để mọi người cùng biết đến kênh của mình, để ủng hộ kênh cho mình, và cho mình một số nhận xét ở dưới phần bình luận để mình có động lực, và cũng để mình cải thiện những video sau hay và hấp dẫn hơn. Cảm ơn mọi người đã lắng nghe. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở trong những video tiếp theo của mình nha.